Hi students. Today is day 3 and we're going to talk about reading, or more specifically syntopical or comparative reading, which means reading articles for research. Today's lecture is a bit special. We'll use not only the slide but several other things. We'll have readings, and I'll be using the readings from day 1, the 4 articles that are posted on your Canvas that you should read, especially this one. I'll zoom in. Attention students, put your laptops away. That's the 3rd article. Again, zooming in. The best way to win an argument. Remember, you'll be choosing this one, or attention students, put your laptops away, either of these two, to read and take notes and summarize. I've also included these 2 articles. This one is what are the skills that every 18-year-old needs. There are 14 different answers here, and this one is a good example of scanning, which we'll talk about later on. And then we also have an article on teaching us how to replace the word very with one of these 128 modifiers. So we'll see below something like this. We'll use these articles as well as a note-taking app where I'll show you what it would look like to take Cornell notes. So I'm using Microsoft OneNote here, and in your paper you could divide your sheet into 3 sections. You have the cues section, you have the summary section at the bottom. So here are my cues, here's my summary, and then here are the main details, my notes. In this demonstration, I will include details, cues, and summary, or in this case, summaries, of the 4 articles that I've read. I recommend you doing a page at least for each article, and then writing a separate page for all 4 articles together. So you would have 5 pages in total. So I will be using free resources in today's lecture. This is including the lecture slides, the articles, and the OneNote app, which is, well, in your case, probably OneNote or some other writing app, or just simply a piece of paper. It is nice to work with paper because you can touch it and feel it. For this demonstration, I'll use OneNote. Back to the slides. Again, we're talking about reading articles for research. You'll be doing this a lot. In fact, you'll be doing this every week. This includes not only articles, but also readings throughout your course, as well as in exams and in your essays as well. So a very, very important skill for this course and other courses that you're taking. Let's take a look at what today's lecture and today's skill is about. There are 4 levels of reading skills, and this slide shows the first 2. The first level is simply reading. Well, you read the words and sentences, so it's called literacy. You, being in this course, have already reached level 1. So yep, it's no surprise here. So you're able to understand words and sentences, and you're able to at least say what words and sentences mean. Now, even in level 1, it depends on your level of vocabulary. So while this is the first level in your reading skill, you can improve your level in even level 1 by improving your vocabulary as well as your grammar. So you have more words that you know, and you know more rules in reading different sentences. So here you see how vocab will help you understand more words and Better grammar will help you understand and write better sentences. And this is at the basic level of basic understanding. What would this look like? Let's try one of these articles. To help you, I will go with the ones that you're assigned to read for this week's summary. So, for example, we understand these words here in the title. Well, attention, you probably know what that means. It's telling us to look and read. Students, that's you. And it's telling us to do something. Put your laptops away. So, verb and pronoun and all that stuff. So even your vocabulary and knowing what different types of words are and what they mean will help you understand even the title. You can go on. So scrolling down, we can take a look at this picture and see the caption here. It reads, laptops are common in lecture halls worldwide. Students hear a lecture at the Johann Wolfgang Goethe University on October 13, 2014 in Frankfurt am Main, Germany. So, for example, you can just simply read the article out loud, and you can keep going as laptops become smaller and more ubiquitous. And with the advent of tablets, the idea of taking notes by hand just seems old-fashioned to many students today. I'm gonna stop right there. Even in this first sentence, I can show you what I was talking about in terms of vocabulary. I'm going to underline some words that you may or may not understand. Ubiquitous, advent. You probably know laptops and tablets because you're probably using one. You probably know about this, taking notes. Probably know this word and this word and this word. So most of these you know. How about ubiquitous and advent? You can probably guess the meaning of this word from the context. This one is a bit harder, but you can probably guess it too. Again, if you're stuck, you can always check the dictionary to see the vocabulary of this word. And in your assignments and in your readings, you can either print out your articles like this. I'm using the online version, and use some system. Maybe underline words you might not understand. I'm going to try this one. The rest looks good. Typing your notes is faster, which comes in handy when there's a lot of information to take down. But it turns out there are still advantages of doing things the old-fashioned way. For one thing, research shows that laptops and tablets have a tendency, maybe you know this word, maybe you don't, to be distracting. It's so easy to click over Facebook in that dull lecture. Okay, I'm going to stop there. You may choose to underline words you don't know to look at the definition and write it. You may find yourself using translations, but I strongly recommend using a dictionary and building your vocabulary with English words. But I digress. You may move over to highlighting words and whatnot, but in level 1, you're simply reading each sentence to understand basically every word and knowing what the sentence means. So that's level 1 reading. You can do the same thing with the other article, the best way to win an argument. You are, I'm afraid to say, mistaken. The position you are taking makes no logical sense. Just listen up and I'll be more happy to elaborate on the many reasons why I'm right and you're wrong. Are you feeling ready to be convinced? You may or may not know the word elaborate. And so again, I'm just practicing and showing you what it's like to read at the basic level, just trying to find out what words and sentences mean. Level 2. Level 2 assumes that you know what the words mean and you're inspecting the different articles that you're reading. In other words, you're skimming and scanning the articles that you're reading. And this results in a superficial understanding. In fact, when you skim and scan, you're not even looking at everything. Remember in level 1, I was reading every word that I see from left to right, which is like scanning. But in level 2, you have to work quickly. You're reading more than one article at a time. And this is going to happen in your research paper where you're reading multiple articles to find the right ones to write your essay on, in which case you're trying to collect information. But the understanding that you'll get from these is superficial because you're only reading possibly the title or the first paragraph or the first sentence of each paragraph, which usually is the topic sentence. So you only understand the topic of things, not necessarily the evidence or the interpretation, which would be in the next sentences in paragraphs, which we'll talk about later. Level 2 reading might look like this. So, I have 4 articles. The first one talks about replacing words with more specific words called modifiers. The second article talks about skills that every 18-year-old needs. The third one talks about using old pen and paper, putting your laptops away. Just by reading this title alone, put your laptops away, it doesn't really tell us why. We had to have read the first paragraph to know, oh, okay, there are still advantages of using pen and paper, doing things the old-fashioned way. The last one, oh, okay, some way to win an argument. This does not talk about academic writing yet. We don't know that. So again, when you're scanning for articles, you can read very, very quickly, but you would get only the basic information. And that's usually the first thing that you see, which is often the title or the first sentence. Some sort of attention grabber. Most students get stuck at level 2. And it looked like this. So you might only have cues. So, well, the first reading, the second reading, the third reading, the fourth reading. And according to the Cornell note system, you shouldn't even write it yet. So, okay, well, in this case, I have one about very. Okay, and then this one talks about skills. And this one talks about trying to remember, because I only work with one window at a time. And it is, oh yes, put laptops away. And this is exactly the kind of problem that you would have when you're doing scanning. You might remember very little, and there's not enough for you to actually write your notes on. Imagine that. So with that kind of information, you're going to have a very tough time writing essays, which we're going to talk about the next 2 levels of reading that you're going to need to complete your summary. And the last one is going to be, yes, win an argument, let's say. I'm going to need more details, don't you think? So that's level 1 and level 2. The first level has a basic understanding of words and sentences, and level 2 has a superficial understanding of basically titles and first sentences, which would not help you in your summary yet. But at least you know what each article is talking about. So let's move on. The next 2 levels, these are the levels of reading that are going to help you take notes and have the necessary information you need to summarize articles, to analyze the key points in them, and to have the ingredients, the information that you need to make comparisons, to find the best piece of evidence, and to interpret them. So here goes. Let's start with level 3. Level 3 is analytical reading, which is the kind of reading that you use for studying and note-taking. Now, it is scanning, which you need based on level 1 and 2, but it goes further. You are going to identify the book's type and the subject matter. This will help you think of the words in that subject that you would need to understand the article more effectively. And next, you would outline the book structure and content. So this not only means what kind of paragraph it has, this will be talking about the key parts of the articles, and there are specific things that you're looking for. I'm circling them here. So each article is going to have some kind of point, the purpose, the answer to it, the big question in the article, and that's your thesis statement, the main point, the big idea. Okay, and then you have supporting points. It can be reasons, it can be ways. So reasons would answer a question to why, and ways would answer the question to how something would happen. Then you would have evidence to support these points, so that would be those facts to support your reasons why or the ways how something works. And then finally, you would make your conclusion, or the article would make the conclusion based on the facts supporting the reasons that support this big idea that the article has. So yes, it does summarize the article and the thesis, and it might add more information. So maybe future research, for example, or some sort of advice. Knowing the structure of essays, which I'll be teaching you how to read and write them, would help you do this kind of reading well. And the more you practice this kind of reading, the better at studying and taking notes you will be in any subjects. So this is what it might look like. Let's try the taking notes article. Okay, so we know what this article is about based on the title and based on the first paragraph. Now, most first sentences in your essay is some sort of attention grabber. Ubiquitous means more common, and you can always double check that. Let's see if I'm right. And let's work this out here. Seeming to be everywhere, sometimes used humorously. So I was close. That you can see this in many places. So common. I was right. Sometimes you could be wrong and I could be wrong, but that's why we have a dictionary, just to check our answers. Okay, moving on. So you may skim and scan the first sentence of each paragraph. So here it's talking about laptops being more ubiquitous. But don't forget, with essays, you have your thesis statement usually at the end of your first paragraph. Yes. So look at this. This is some sort of fact talking about how laptops are more common, and that note-taking on paper seems to be less common or old-fashioned. And this sentence talks about how taking notes is favored or more common because people think that taking notes is faster when you have some sort of device, like some sort of laptop or some sort of computer. You see? However, here is the sentence that talks about the main point of the article, and it should match the title. Notice you can check whether these sentences actually match the title. The first one talks about laptops, but it does not match this title that talks about, hey, it's telling us to put the laptops away. The second sentence also does not match. It talks about the opposite. Again, saying why students take notes on laptops and tablets and mobile devices, not the other way around. This sentence gives us a thesis statement. Why should students put their laptops away? Well, because there are advantages of doing things the old-fashioned way, and that refers to taking notes by hand or on paper. You see? And this is your thesis statement. Okay. And the following paragraphs that come after would be your body paragraphs, which would have supporting evidence and main points, and then your last paragraph would have conclusions. So keep going. I'll do one more. So this would be a paragraph that talks about the research of laptops and tablets. So we have a transition word here for one thing. So it talks about, like, on the one hand. Here is a research, which I wonder where, but for now, let's just say the research shows that doing laptops and tablets can be distracting. So that would be some sort of disadvantage to using laptops. And it goes on to say why it can be distracting. And then another study, which really should be cited, but I'll leave that alone for now. What does it show? Well, here it talks about that students have to be slower when you take notes by hand, which doesn't sound good at first. It might sound counterintuitive. It might not be what you expect, but actually, taking the time to read the notes and write it, just like you see me doing now on the video, allows you to look at each word together and look at what the sentence means, and you're using your hand too. So this makes it more useful. So this sentence actually talks about an advantage to taking notes. And which is why I'm using a pen to do this. It helps me too, and it should help you. So what I recommend is printing the articles and doing something like this, writing on the paper. And I'm using this as a demonstration. So we go on to read, doing this for every paragraph. Take a look at the sentence and knowing what it means. So, for example, in your introduction, you would have your topic, and then you have the issue, and then you'd have some sort of, where the big question, if there is, but then you'll always have the answer to the big question. Should students put their laptops away? And then this is your thesis statement. Okay, and then you have your body paragraphs, and then it should have a topic, and then it should have some evidence. And then you have some sort of explanation for the evidence. And then you have some sort of concluding sentence to summarize the point. So some sort of supporting point. And I'm going to skip to the conclusion to show you what that looks like. But for now, remember, each paragraph in any article that is academic, at least, has a particular structure that you can use to quickly understand what you're looking for and know what to circle and what to underline and what to write in the margins, like this, to help you write in your notes. So in my Cornell notes, it might look something like this. Oh, okay, to put your laptops away. Well, the thesis would be students should use pen and paper and write their notes by hand. Here I'm also practicing a skill of paraphrasing, which is writing the thesis statement that the author has written in my own words. Notice I wrote, students should use pen and paper and write their notes by hand. The thesis statement here in the article does not contain the words that I used, but the meaning is very, very similar. This sentence talks about the advantages of the old-fashioned way, which is pen and paper handwriting notes. And it goes on to outline what these advantages could be, that shows being more useful and how it would affect your learning. So take time to read the article and see if you can find the supporting points to the thesis. For example, one of the supporting points could be one. Well, computers can be distracting, right? Number 2, handwriting helps you slow down. Okay, back to the notes. Handwriting helps you slow down. And I might elaborate on this. Helps you slow down to remember what you learned better or for longer. So I've just written the thesis statement and 2 supporting points that I found in the first 2 paragraphs. By carefully reading your articles like this, and the key part here is to actually have a separate piece of paper and writing your notes. The act of writing actually helps you think. Instead of storing everything in your head, you are putting your thoughts on paper, so then you can work with it. You can read it out loud again, you can make changes like I did, you can cross out some things, add more things. So your organization and your note-taking would really help you understand any article better. And this is a very, very important skill. Don't worry if you run out of space because you don't know how to space things out yet. So here's a recommendation. Try to give yourself more space than you need. In fact, you can use the Cornell note system for every page, every article. So instead of me trying to summarize all 4 articles on one page, have 4 different note pages. This way you have more space to write and make changes. But for this demonstration, I'm using just very short articles and short notes to show you what it would look like. So again, you try it with 1 note page per article. It will really, really help you. Okay, the last level of reading, syntopical reading. That is to explore and research different topics. This level assumes that you have read the articles and saying each one after scanning in level 2 and choosing the ones that you find interesting or relevant, and then carefully analyzing the readings, identifying the book type or article type and subject matter, and outlining the structure and content. Here, note it's structure and content. Use the structure to help you find the content that you need, like thesis, supporting points, evidence, and conclusions. These are your building blocks. So each article would have its own set of notes, its own set of structure, its own set of content, and your job in level 4 is to put them together. So here it reads, read different books on the same topic to get a bigger picture on how they work together to increase your knowledge or our knowledge of the topic. Now, reading this sentence at face value, you may forget, oh, okay, I can do this. I'll just read the books and try to remember everything in your head. But remember what I've just told you. If you do not take notes and try to keep everything in your head, you're going to run out of space. Like a cup that is already filled with water and you have to fill more water. The only way to get you more space is to use a bigger cup, which is note-taking. With the notes, it would look something like this. So I'm going to quickly try and show you what the thesis is and 2 supporting points for winning an argument. Let's see if there's any connection at all. Let's take a look. Okay, so this article starts talking about the best way to win an argument. And the first sentence reads, how do you change someone's mind if you think you are right and they're wrong? Psychology reveals the last thing you do is the tactic that we usually resort to. Okay. It goes on to say the first paragraph. Let's take a look. It says, you are, I'm afraid, mistaken. We've read this before. The position you are taking makes no logical sense. Just listen up and I'll be more happy to elaborate on the many, many reasons why I'm right and why you're wrong. Are you feeling ready to be convinced? This reads like an attention grabber. There's no thesis statement yet. Whether the subject is climate change, the Middle East, or the forthcoming holiday plans, this is the approach that many of us adopt when we try to convince others to change our minds. The first sentence where we can take a look at what this article is about. This reads like a topic sentence, an opening sentence for the article. Okay, it talks about a particular approach that we use to try to convince others. And this approach talks about this idea that we read in the opening statement up there below. It talks about that, oh, I'm right and you are wrong. Okay, and this is saying that's the attitude that people may take, or in this article it says often take, to try and convince somebody, saying that, oh, I have the right information, you don't, so you should change your mind. So this is what the approach says that we in general would try and do, according to this article. Let's read on. It's also an approach that more often than not leads to the person on the receiving end hardening their existing position. So this talks about the listener now. The speaker tries to convince by saying, I'm right and you're wrong. But the person who is listening, and this is on the receiving end, that's what that means, it makes them resist, makes them hard to not change their mind. So this may be some sort of result to the approach. Okay, now this also talks about the issue. So the issue here is that most people seem to take the approach of saying that I'm right and you're wrong to tell them to change their mind, because you assume that they're wrong and you try to convince them that they're wrong. And the issue with that is, instead of changing their mind, you're actually making them believe their opinion even more. So you are actually making them less likely to change their mind, which is the opposite of what you want. So to resolve this issue, the implied question is, how do we change the minds of others? Or how do we convince others? So could replace change the minds of others to convince others of what we think. And so here it says the research that they're going to point out, and here's the evidence that they're going to use to support whatever reasons that they have or ways that they can do this, a better way that does not result in the listener not changing their mind. And this is what they suggest, that the speaker, one that involves more listening and less trying to bludgeon, so you can check what this word means in the dictionary, your opponent into submission. So if you're stuck on any of these words, again, you can check out what they mean. But for now, this sentence, if you can guess it, it means this: just keep telling them again and again that I'm right and you're wrong. Saying the same thing again and again and again. But the research and this thesis statement suggests that instead of doing more talking, you should do more listening to convince other people. Okay, and let's take a look at the first paragraph. A little over a decade ago, Leonard Rosenblit and Frank Kyle of Yale University suggested that in many instances, people believe they understand how something works when in fact their understanding is superficial at best. So this is some sort of fact right now, and it's a topic sentence. It refers to people's understanding. They think they know, but they don't. They call this phenomenon the illusion of explanatory depth. We'll have to read on to know what that is. And the next sentence talks about the evidence. So it talks about their study and what they found with this illusion. I'll stop right there. Now we have enough points. At least we know what the thesis statement is. And one of the reasons why it is better to listen than to, let's say, talk when you try to convince somebody. So let's see what that looks like. So the thesis here is we, or people, should do more listening and less talking when they try to convince others. There. That's my paraphrase of the article's thesis statement. And here are some supporting points. Well, the first one I can find from the opening sentence, or at least the issue that they have. I can paraphrase it this way. The more people try to convince others by telling them that they are wrong, the less likely they are in changing their mind. Or I could say the more likely that the more they will resist. So I might write that instead. The more they will resist, implying the resist, the convincing, I suppose. So I'll stop there. Let's see if there are any connections. Now, here's the nice thing about your notes. When you're working with your notes, you can put them together, and because you wrote them down, it's something that you understand, that you work with, and you can try to see if there's any connection at all. Sometimes you might not find any. For example, this article talks about learning in terms of using pen and paper versus using computer, and the article suggests that we should use paper more often. And then the other article talks about, when we try to convince others or win an argument, we should actually do more listening and less talking. So it is a lot easier to say that these articles are very different, and they are, and say, now I know that there's not really any connections. However, if someone were to ask you if there are any connections between the articles, you would have a better chance in finding connections with your notes than it is that trying to find connections in the articles just by reading them, because you are working with the information right here in your notes. In fact, if you were trying to do this just by reading, you're basically doing all the note-taking and trying to do all that in your head. At your level, that's almost impossible, and it's also hard with me as well, even with years of practice. That's why note-taking is so useful and important in all of your assignments, and even in my teaching as well. So that's kind of level 4. So to review, here are the steps when reading for research that you can do and that helps you move from level 1 to all the way to level 4. Step 1. Gather books and articles on the topic. Well, I've gathered the articles for me to read and take notes on right here. If you're using the internet, you can use tabs for this. Try not to have too many tabs at once. You can have windows just on the articles alone, and that way, instead of having 16 tabs, you would have only as many tabs as you need for the article reading. Or if you have books, just have the ones you need. The idea is to save space and save time. Step 2, skim all the resources that you've collected. The best way to skim using the Cornell Note method would be, hey, to save space, or have your articles, have your notes ready, and jot down notes like this. Oh, well, what's all this? What the title of the article is, what your thesis statement is, what your supporting points are, and whatnot, and just get the rough idea for level 2 in step 2 what each article is about. So at least you know you can answer yourself when you ask, hey, what am I reading here? Also, this lets you choose and think about which resources are going to be the most useful and which ones you don't need. You may end up trying to read 8 articles and you have to skip half of them because they're not relevant at all. For example, if I were to find articles on why I should use pen and paper instead of laptops, I would just skip the article entirely because it's not relevant at all. Step 3, scan for the sections of each resource that you find useful. Here, you would use your notes to look for the certain things and fill it in. Keywords and passages, facts and data, research question and research statement, thesis statement, and an arguments and conclusion. Okay, this step is very useful to do when you're using the Cornell Notes. And remember, try to use one page at least, separate page per article, so you can look at them together. And then you can maybe put all of the articles together of your notes into one and then on a separate one note summary. It is important not to combine these steps. Find the articles first. Don't try to write notes on every article that you read, especially the ones that aren't relevant, because it may not save you time. However, you will get better at this with practice, and it is better to try and take notes on everything first. You'll become more efficient at it this way by experience. Step 4, you would connect the author's ideas and languages together in your language. For now, in terms of summary, what this would mean is if you look at keywords, you may find words that would repeat more than once that you would want to note down. Let's take a look at this to see if we can find any. So, I'm just going to use this part here. Let's give it a try. There's some keywords: laptops, tablets, old-fashioned, notes, that's going to be everywhere. Notes, note-taking, and then some important words like summarizing, paraphrasing, concept mapping. So looking for keywords when you're taking notes would help you focus on sentences that are going to have the important information. So again, structure and content, that's level 3. And keywords would help you make connections as you find articles, and even within the article itself, looking at paragraphs. This one talks about translating the author's terms into the terms of your research question. Paraphrasing would help you do this. For now, in your summary, you're practicing the paraphrasing skill and summarizing skill. Step 5, examine and compare the various points of view present in your sources. You do not need to do this yet for your summary, but it is a good practice for you to do when you read the different articles. So this includes seeing which which articles agree with your opinion, which articles disagree with your opinion, and what articles just talk about something entirely different. Step 6, you would prepare your essay as a continuing discussion of the topic. We'll skip this slide for now. However, if you're reading this in the future weeks, what this means is that there are people writing articles every day, and they keep writing articles on the same topic because there's always more to learn. So your article is going to be like a camera picture, like a snapshot in time, looking at the articles that are currently available. And your essay would contribute to the topic itself. It may help some other people someday in their research. So here's a summary of all the reading skills and steps that you would do. 1, gather the books and articles that you're going to need. In your summary, you're going to read the article. Number 2, skim through all the sources and find the relevant ones. In this case, your summary, you're assigned one of the two, so you look at them both and choose one. Next, scan each source for keywords and relevant passages. In your summary, you would choose, well, the one source and scan that source carefully to look at any keywords or relevant sentences. Next, connect keywords and passages to your sources. This would help you summarize the article from a whole page like this into a 150 to 200 word summary. This is more than 200 words. So you are going to need to look for the key parts for your summary. And the way to help you do that is to look at keywords and relevant passages. Next, you examine and compare various points of view. This step is for different articles. But for your summary, you may compare the different types of evidence. For example, in your notes that we're looking at, I found a disadvantage with using computers and an advantage with using pen and paper. You can compare the two this way. An advantage for something you agree with and a disadvantage for something that you don't agree with. And number 6, prepare your summary essay as a part of an ongoing discussion. In your case, you'll be preparing your summary as a part of an ongoing discussion on either of the articles that we assigned you. And finally, be objective when you read through each source. Remember, you're taking notes on what the author is saying. And even if you're paraphrasing, you're writing their idea in your words. So it is not your idea, it is the author's idea. So everything that I wrote here is my notes on the author's idea, these are not my ideas. That doesn't come yet. Summary is writing their idea. In your essay that you'll do later on, like next week's assignment, the opinion, and then the research essay, that would include parts of your idea. That would be your essay. But for now, you are summarizing their essay. And that's it for today's lecture on how to read for research. So this lecture again is useful for this week in summarizing a source, and it's going to be useful for the future weeks where you are going to be summarizing, analyzing, and synthesizing the different sources for your term paper. I wish you the best of luck. If you have any questions on this skill that we're doing today, you feel free to ask me or post a question on week 2 discussion forum. Really make sure you either print the articles or have some sort of way that you can write on it, and make sure you have some sort of way on your computer, mobile device, or better yet, a piece of pen and paper to write notes, separate pages of notes for each article, and then maybe even taking your notes on the notes that you've just written. It's a big summary note. This way, you can really engage in academic reading for research. And that reading actually involves writing and taking notes to help you read better. All right, that's it for today's lecture. We'll see you next time. Stay tuned.